මොකක් බරපතලම අපරාධයක් තමයි මේක. එක්තරා විදිහකට උඟක් වේදනාකාරී මේ අනිශ්චිතභාවය නිසා. මොකද මේ අතුරුදහන් වෙච්ච අය මම හිතන්නේ හොයන්න දැන් දෙකක් තියෙනවා. එකක් තමයි ජීවතුන් අතර. ජීවතුන් අතර කියන්නේ කොහේ හරි බලාත්කාරයෙන් රහසිගත රැඳුම් මධ්‍යස්ථානයක හරි තියාගෙන ඉන්නවද කියලා. ඒ ජීවතුන් අතර ඉන්න අය. එහෙම නැත්නම් දෙවණියට හොයන්න වෙන්නේ මලවුන් අතර. ඒතර මේ සමූහ මිනිවලවල් කියන්නේ මම හිතන්නේ මේ මලවුන් අතර අතුරුදහන් වෙච්ච අය හොයන්න කරන උත්සාහයක්. අපිට දන්නේ නැති කාගේද කියලා දන්නේ නැති මේ සැකිලිටයක් හමු වුණාම ඒක කාගේද කියලා අඳුන ගන්න බලන්න උත්සාහ කරනවා. ඒතර ඒක එක වැදගත් කොටසක් තමයි මම හිතන්නේ හඳුනා ගැනීම. මේ කවුද කියලා. තව කොටසක් වෙන්න පුළුවන් මේකෙද මේ අපරාධයට වග කියන්න ඕන අය කවුද කියලා. අපරාධමය වශයෙන් වගවීම මේ ඉෂ්ට කර ගැනීම. ඒ වගේම ඊට අමතරව තව හුඟක් දේවල් වෙන්න පුළුවන්. සිහි කිරීම, වන්දි ලබා දීම, මේ වගේ තව හුඟක් දේවල් වෙන්න පුළුවන්. ඒ ප්‍රධානම දෙකක් විදිහට දකින්නේ හඳුනා ගැනීම කියන එක. මේ කවුද කියලා, මේ කාගේද කියලා. මොකද එක පැත්තකින් ලංකාවේ අතුරුදහන් වෙච්ච අය දසදහස් ගාණක් ඉන්නවා. තමාගේ ඥාතීන්ට මොකද උනේ කියලා හොයන. අනිත් පැත්තෙන් මේ ඇටසැකිලි හම් වෙලා තියෙනවා. දැනට වාර්තා වෙලා තියෙන විදිහට සමූහ මිනිවලවල් 34ක විතර. ඊට වඩා වැඩි වෙන්නත් පුළුවන්. උතර ඒ විස්තරාත්මකව මම හිතන්නේ මේ පොතේ තියෙනවා. ඉතින් මුලින්ම මම ආරාධනා කරනවා විශේෂයෙන්ම උතුරේ අතුරුදහන් වීම සහ සමූහ මිනිවලවල් ගැන ටිකක් වැඩි අවධානයක් යොමු කරමින්, පුරාණ නැගෙනහිර ප්‍රදේශය ගැනත් අවධානයක් යොමු කරමින්, විශේෂයෙන්ම මේ මෑත කාලේ හුඟක් කතා බහට ලඟු මේ ලක්කචේ වගේ මේ පොතේ නමක් තියෙන මේ චෙම්මනි ගැනත් අවධානයක් යොමු කරමින් අදහස් බෙදා ගැනීමට මේ නීතිඥ රනිතා සහෝදරියට ready?
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for Journalists Association for bringing this book out today and inviting me as one of the panelists to talk about mass graves and across North and East in Sri Lanka. I wanted to highlight three main points in relation to this topic. First is why we want to connect the mass graves with enforced disappearances, missing or abduction persons, especially across North and East. Because we all know there was war which took place in this country more than 3 decades, in which the Sri Lanka has been registered as second highest disappeared people in United Nations People's Disappearances Working Group Committee. So in that there were like 60,000 to 100,000 people's name have been recorded as missing, abduction and enforced disappearance. So within that, during the war, we all know, still today also we talk about that draconian law, Prevention of Terrorism Act. In addition to that, emergency regulation, and there are other supportive laws which directly deal with terrorism activity have been implemented, which directly affected and forcibly implemented across North and East, especially people who talk in Tamil. In the meantime, there were people who have been called for inquiry and then they never returned. People who were walking and crossing the checkpoints, they stopped, they never returned. And then there were search operations, round up, and in that there will be a person who will be used as an identifier, who identify where people were like put in lines. One by one will pass that identifier, and then that person, if we knock down the heads, then that person will be taken by the security forces, detained, and then thereafter many of them have never returned back to their homes. So like that, the disappearances have been take place systematically during the war until it ends in May 19, 2009. I want to make a note here. We all think that the war has been ended on May 19, 2009 in North and East and the entire country. But if you get a chance to go to north and east, visit those places, then you will see how the shadow has been like taking place till today on operational, labeling those areas as operations, because even after the end of war, the PTA has been enforced. The former cadres who have been undergone for rehabilitations are under surveillance. Even people who work on human rights issues, who raise their community issues, are under surveillance. There are many people, even number of people, day by day, they have been called for inquiry by the TID or CID from those areas. Nowadays, it has been like well established. I have to say, being as a human rights lawyer who is dealing directly with this kind of issues, there are branches which have been established across the district, especially on TID and then CID. So people very minimally call for investigations or inquiry in Colombo. Instead of that, people have been invited there in north and east, wherever the TID officers or CID branches have been established. Especially you might come across very recently, Tarindu and his friends also have mentioned Kumanan's name. Kumanan is a photojournalist who has been like continuously reporting and speaking about the violation what is happening across north and east through his photographs, which is very powerful and effective. So he has been summoned for inquiry on 17th of this month for what his work he is currently working on. So this is how the situation in north and east, even though the war ended. So why we want to connect the mass graves and enforce disappearances? Because this kind of activities, there are many family members who are protesting even after end of war, looking for the answers of their loved one, whoever have been taken somewhere through the search operation, somewhere from the checkpoint, or the last phase of surrendees who have been surrendered, even they have been called, they will be rehabilitated and released and reintegrated with the community. So there were a number of people. Bishop Rayap Joseph, when he was making the statement before the LLRC committee, he numbered like more than 124,000 people who have been like never returned from the war zone into the place where the military has control over. So these are the numbers and figures which we are talking about. Now we are finding and then struggling with the mass graves which are open. There are like few places which the witnesses are talking about. But on the other hand, there are 14 mass grave sites which are open and ongoing before the judicial process. If we talk about those 14 mass graves, I would mark like the first Germany grave site. That has been like started to process when Somaratna Rajapaksa has opened up his mouth when the final verdict of Prashanthi Kumaraswamy's case was about to be. So it was on 3rd of July 1999. From that day, they have started the case process. They conducted the inquiry. They excavated 15 human remains from the identified buried places. The investigation was over. There were like 6 suspects who have been produced before the court, and the report which have been sent for Aegis department that never returned back to the instruction to the magistrate court for the further proceedings. So if we count the years of that case process, more than 30 years have been finished, no instruction from Aegis department to process it. When we go and meet with the families after this ceremony too, families have said like they got the DNA, like blood samples from us. There were like people who identified the skeletal remains as their beloved loved ones who have been taken by the military, and then no progress have been like informed to the families. So what is the legal process we are talking about? There are gaps, and also like families' participation is very limited because of the intimidation and surveillance of all these cases what I will surround in relation with the mass grave. So participating in 6 mass graves for the aggrieved party, the families, I would say there are lack of expertise on mass grave cases we are dealing with that. So we are now developing on that. Even though we need some experts, especially the mass grave process should be handled by anthropologists and then archaeologists who have the knowledge on that to deal with. It's not the normal post-mortem inquest process which can be done through the mass grave cases. So it is the anthropology and archaeology experts who can contribute and do the analysis, because they have to deal with the bones, not with the fresh bodies. That is one. And also, like when we go back to the 14 cases, the high profile cases which I can list, and then I am also participating in that. One is like Mana Trikeswaram mass grave. The second one is Satosa mass grave. In the Trikeswaram mass grave, there were 83 skeletal remains which were unearthed, and then that have been like transferred to Anuradhapura Judicial Medical Officer's office, and then now it is being transferred to Judicial Medical Officer's Colombo. The bone analysis have been completed. There are like reports which are pending. The bone, there were like only 32 bone analysis report have been filed. This case has started in 2013. Imagine the time drag on, how much time this case has been dragged on. The families come every court day to the court without missing it. So Satosa mass grave, which had been like identified in 2018, there were like 379 bones have been unearthed from the site. So carbon dating test was sent, but the lab result came. There is no interpretation about the lab results, and then we have demanded for the comprehensive report in 2020. The report is still dragging on from the court. So it's been like the carbon dating test report came in 2020, and then 5 years the experts are taking time to like providing the comprehensive report. If we take Kokutoduvai mass grave, which has been identified in 2022, there are 52 remains which have been unearthed from the site, and the timing, the archaeology report has been submitted, the bone analysis report have been submitted. The court has ordered for the tracing process 1.5 years ago, which was, the order was given to Office of Missing Person. The Office of Missing Person, like what Ruki was saying, and also like Tarindu was mentioning, we all talk about Office of Missing Person, but we never see any productive outcome or like transparent information sharing in public in favor of the victims or the families. So they are not, like when we have discussion on this kind of matters like mass graves and then related families, they are not no more independent, because they have been put under one ministry, then they have to like always go according to the ministry's policies and strategy, what they have to abide with. There are more controls. Financial capacity and independence is no more there with them. So those are the struggles which we are talking, they are facing. And then with all these struggles, we still promoting the Office of Missing Person is the only relief for the enforced disappearance of people to get the answers or the justice for the loved ones who are actually looking for. The third thing all about like the recent one, the Chammani mass grave too. This is like, you have to see like all the previous mass grave, what I mentioned is like more than 6 months, 8 months. The maximum is like 1 year and 9 months the excavation happened. But this mass grave particularly, we only had exhumation for 32 weeks. So within the 32 weeks, 11 meter into 15 meters size of land, we exhumed 141 skeletal remains from that small area. So it's huge. Within a small time period, number of skeletal remains, and also with the limited resources and machineries, the team is working hard from 7:30 to like, sometimes it goes around 10:30, 11, but they are working very hard to like get exhumed the entire skeletal remains which are existing in that particular site. The final one I have to say, like Sambu, which has been like very recently identified in 1 month ago. That is also which is very dangerous. I don't know like how many of you have heard about it. The bones are mixed with the landmines, because that is being like identified when the land clearance process which has been taken place in that area. So that excavation is hugely risk for the expert and the people who are going to oversee and then participate in the process. So we don't have maximum technical equipment. We don't have maximum technical expertise to deal with this sort of mass grave site inside the country. So if we want to go how these mass graves have been identified, it's not through any of the investigation. It's not the effort, single effort which have been put by the state. It all came out accidentally when people were started to do any construction, or like laying out water pipes, or like they want to like clean up the cemetery and then put up something like electric burner to bury the body in the cemetery site. And also on the other hand, landmine clearance, because Palai, Pudukudiripu, Pudumathalan, Sambur, all sort of sites have been identified the land mine clearing people. So these are the incidents which always put forward. So we are not kind of like sleeping under the soil. We are actually looking for our loved ones to show we are here. And also those souls are looking for justice and answers. People should know what had happened to them under the soil, because it's all happened in the absence of any single witness. Nobody would come forward and then say, because we have to, if we want to find out, we have to call the souls to testify in the court. But investigation also, like, families are really tired about, because they have gone before number of commissions, number of committees, number of people to make complaints and then looking for the answers from them. So investigation are like very slow process. By way of like explaining the timeline of the case process, you may be understood like how delay and then drag up which has been like taken place during mass grave cases dealing, especially on enforced disappearance across North and East. Mothers, wives, family members, relatives are looking for the answers. As Ruki said, it's not only about the court process or legal process. Family have the right to know the truth. Family have the right to know what happened to their loved ones, and also like who had done that. And also like they have the right to do traditional respectful burial for their loved one if that had been like fined from. So these are something which is very much related with the mass grave in relation to the enforced disappearances, abductions and missing. I have to say that as both Tarindus explained, there are like limitation and censorship in between north and east, especially northeast and then the south. What had happened in south, it's not been like fully conveyed in north and east, and then what had happened in north and east, it's not been fully conveyed to the south. But the actual truth should be accepted. Still today, like we are completing like 16 years of completion of war, but there is no acknowledgement from a state to say this had been happened to my own citizen, and then I will vouch that and then try to give best to provide the justice and answers to the families who are victims out of it. So I will end my note. You can bury the bodies, but you can't bury the truth, because the unburied bones and souls are breaking the soil and coming out these days to tell the world and then tell the people, saying that we are not buried properly and then we are not served justice still. Thank you.